Welcome to A2Council Update, a recap of the Ann Arbor City Council meeting on September 16, 2024. This meeting included comments and discussion about adding land use buffers to the Uniform Development Code, adding exceptions to the city ban on gas-powered leaf blowers, zoning properties recently annexed into the city, amending terms of the Home Energy Rating Disclosure Ordinance, expanding the Nondiscrimination Ordinance to include the right to sit, directing future allocations of county millage rebate funds. This is the voting chart for the council meeting on September 16, 2024. There were 2 split votes during amendments to the gas leaf blower ordinance. 3 agenda items were postponed. All others were approved. Councilmember Song was absent. This was her 11th absence since taking office in November 2020. Councilmember Ghazi Edwin attended remotely. She explained,
I'm attending this meeting virtually due to a serious knee injury that prevents me from bearing weight on my leg.
This would have been Ghazi Edwin's 11th absence since taking office in November 2022. You can find this voting chart and more information about this meeting at A2Council.com. Like and subscribe if you would like to see more content like this. The meeting included a presentation from Maura Thompson, Director of the Downtown Development Authority, or DDA.
I wanted to share with you tonight an update on the downtown area circulation study. We are looking at expanding our downtown bikeway network. We are looking at transit improvements. We are looking at two-way restoration of 5th and Division. And the last component has changed since we began this study. So we really believe that Liberty Street is ready for a major infrastructure project, and that could be really transformational for our downtown. Enhanced public spaces. So we are looking at the farmers market, which I know the city will be undertaking a capital project in the next couple of years. Sculpture Plaza, Liberty Plaza. So this is space that we're looking at for a potential new plaza area that the State Street District could use for activation. So recommendations coming out of the study for extending our current downtown bikeway loop include an extension of the Catherine Street Bikeway, the Division Street Bikeway, Broadway Plymouth Side Path, North Main and Summit Connector, and then some traffic calming improvements on Washington Street. The dotted lines indicate those project areas, and much of those project areas does extend beyond the DDA's current boundaries. Finally, I would invite you all and the public to join us at our next downtown planning open house. That includes circulation study and the downtown piece of the comprehensive plan. It will be October 23rd at the Downtown Public Library, and I hope you all can make it.
After introductory remarks, public comments, and staff explanations, Council discussed agenda items for less than 40 minutes. 11 people signed up in advance to offer public comments. 9 people spoke to topics on the agenda. The consent agenda this week included 11 items and expenditures of just over $1.5 million. Ahead of the meeting, 1 item was deleted from the consent agenda. A development on West Stadium Boulevard is set to provide 84 affordable housing units as payment in lieu of taxes. Nothing was pulled for discussion, and the consent agenda was approved unanimously. After a brief introduction, Council unanimously approved amendments to the City Code requiring a 15-foot buffer between areas of vehicular use and residential districts or public parks. Council considered amendments to a city ordinance restricting the use of gas-powered leaf blowers. Amendments will permit the use of gas-powered leaf blowers by the City Parks Department and others facilitating prescribed burns. Earlier in the evening, commenters spoke at a public hearing.
The question here tonight is whether electric leaf blowers can perform efficiently enough to quickly create these burn breaks at controlled burn sites. So if staff hasn't already, I suggest giving 1 or 2 backpack models a try before concluding that electric isn't good enough for the job. Maybe staff did test one of these. If so, great. But if not, I don't think you should approve this exception.
Maybe the way to do this would be to have this be a temporary exception that gets renewed every 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, something like that.
City staff responded to concerns.
Straight to the answer, I have in front of me notes on at least one of the models that was tested by field staff. It was the Steel BGA 300 with an AR 3000 battery, which, as it's noted here by staff, is the most powerful electric leaf blower available through Steel. I do not have the details on the other electric model, but I do know for certain that both were backpack battery powered and not handheld.
Regardless of whether there's a time frame on it or not, as soon as there is a unit able to do what we needed to do, we're going to make the switch.
Council and staff discussed it for about 15 minutes.
I think I would be very comfortable postponing this and putting a time cap on this to come back to council with. Do I need to make a formal motion to postpone, Mr. Mayor?
If you wish to make the motion, then you do.
I would like to postpone this for continued dialogue with staff and council and bring it back at the next meeting.
I would be stunned in 2 weeks there's any technology or anything that would change staff's opinion about this direction.
We're not the only parties that conduct ecological burns, and so I think while for my part, all the confidence in the world that if, the big bad blower was released tomorrow, staff would jump on it.
Council considered an amendment that would have added a sunset provision so that gas-powered blowers could not be used for ecological burns after December 31st, 2026.
Thus, the exception would wash out on January 1, 2027.
For all we know, 6 months from now, there could be new technology on the market that could render this entire amendment unnecessary.
I guess I just wanted to point out that we already have a pattern set forth in the original ordinance for sunsetting. That is the phase-in in which we're allowing the gas-powered leaf blowers basically during the heavy leaf season until 2028.
I think I'm ultimately going to vote no. I am not necessarily comfortable imposing an artificial deadline on the sunset without knowing exactly where the technology is going to be, and because it applies to private interests as well as the city.
The motion to add a sunset provision failed. In a split vote, the original amendments, as proposed, were approved with Council members Briggs and Cornell voting no. Without discussion, Council unanimously approved 2 rezonings of properties recently annexed into the city from Ann Arbor Township. Council considered amendments to the Home Energy Rating Disclosure Ordinance that will clarify energy score reporting and enforcement procedures. This ordinance was first introduced in August 2023, and its approval was delayed due to complaints from local realtors. It was ultimately approved in September 2023. The ordinance requires home sellers to provide a home energy score report to potential buyers. Requirements do not apply to multi-story multifamily housing, accessory dwelling units, mobile homes, or commercial buildings. This week's amendments will add language clarifying the exception for multi-story multi-unit housing. Other amendments clarify that the energy report must be publicly available and posted online for as long as the property is for sale. Earlier in the meeting, a commenter spoke about it.
I'm the chair of the Ann Arbor chapter of the Government Affairs Committee at the Greater Metropolitan Association of Realtors. By introducing these proposed changes, we feel like it's actually creating some new problems and doesn't solve the ones that are there. In Section 8-395-1, it's attempting to clarify dwellings that do not require the disclosure. So we've seen multiple issues related to what types of buildings require the disclosure, and the most common issue we've seen is that a condo is exempt from the rule, but yet agents and sellers have received notifications threatening them that they're going to be fined anyway. Like if you guys have all sold a house before, usually you have a realtor involved, and you're not even supposed to be at the house. But this ordinance is saying that the seller is responsible for providing this to people who visit the house. It doesn't make sense.
Staff responded.
We worked with a realtor. We actually worked with the realtor on this amendment where they were selling all of the units as one package, and that qualifies because you can do an assessment in that space.
Council discussed it for less than 5 minutes.
I also received some feedback today from folks in the real estate community, and probably I think there's opportunity between first reading and second reading to just connect staff with those.
I'm grateful for the home energy rating disclosure is an important part of our moving the built environment towards better reflecting our 820 goals and providing buyers an important metric by which to evaluate the home that they're purchasing.
Amendments to the Home Energy Rating Disclosure Ordinance were approved unanimously at first reading. At a future meeting, the amendments will be the subject of a public hearing and final approval at second reading. Council then considered an amendment to the city's Nondiscrimination Ordinance, granting employees a right to sit while at work. The ordinance explains that an employer must demonstrate that sitting interferes with the duties of the job. Earlier in the meeting, public commenters spoke to the issue.
I have been a hairstylist for 18 years. I was born with scoliosis, and as I have been getting older, it has been a little bit more difficult for me to do my job without experiencing pain. One thing that has absolutely saved my career is having a chair to sit on during my workday. Being able to sit during a few tasks throughout the day has made it so I can complete a full day of work without being extremely sore. At the time, I received a lot of backlash from my employer about having a chair next to me and sitting during the workday. They claimed that I would need a note from a doctor for accommodations or being claimed as disabled to have this chair. After a few months of going back and forth with my employer about a simple chair, I was able to prove that sitting in a chair did not inhibit my job at all.
This is a labor rights issue because it relates to the safety of the workplace and health of the worker. This is also a human rights issue concerned with dignity, fairness, and respect. Not all people who need to sit periodically have a legally qualifying disability, and this ordinance change would ensure that all employees are treated fairly and provided what they need. Workers are more productive if they have the right to sit, especially because this ordinance doesn't allow for interference with job duties.
At a restaurant, I was called out for even leaning on the counter. Being on your feet that much isn't good for anybody, and it especially wasn't good for me. Turns out being on my feet so much probably wasn't good for me, but honestly, it isn't good for anybody.
I'm a resident of Ann Arbor. I'm also the president of the Area Labor Federation, Huron Valley Area Labor Federation, and as an organization that represents workers and workers' rights and interests, we have an interest in the right to sit modification to the ordinance that's being proposed. I will say that we have not had extensive discussions of this. It's a relatively new issue to us. We look forward to being part of an ongoing discussion about what these kinds of reforms would mean, to being at the table as that discussion unfolds.
I am the current chairman of the Commission on Disability Issues, but I speak with you this evening as that, but also as a resident. Workers need to be given the right to sit, but this also needs to be met for workers who do not meet the threshold for legal disability, as fees of physical challenges and fees for health care can be astronomical.
Council discussed it for less than 5 minutes.
I and others have been working on this initiative for almost a year, and once it was ready earlier this week, I wanted it to be published to the agenda to really give the public an opportunity to engage with the material and fully understand its implications. I would appreciate more time to ensure that this is done thoroughly.
Council considered a postponement.
Who decides whether a job can be done sitting down and when? Who will be doing the enforcing? What will be the implications?
And I hope to, again, engage with various stakeholders before I bring this forward again.
Council voted unanimously to postpone the ordinance amendment to the first meeting in October. After a brief introduction, Council unanimously approved a resolution allowing Creative Washtenaw to apply for a charitable gaming license in order to conduct a raffle. Council then considered a resolution directing future budget allocations of money that will be received as part of a county millage rebate. This November, Ann Arbor voters will consider the renewal of a county millage originally approved in 2017 to fund county services for mental health and public safety. The millage includes a rebate of funds to the city because Ann Arbor maintains its own Department of Law Enforcement. In 2017, City Council approved a resolution describing future allocations of these rebate funds in order to support bicycle safety, affordable housing, and climate action. Those purposes did not appear on the ballot, but were promoted widely by local advocacy organizations who supported the funding. This week's resolution mirrors the resolution of 2017, describing allocations that will ultimately be decided later in a regular budget process with future elected leaders. Earlier in the meeting, Advocates spoke in support of the allocations.
We've got several properties that are under development. We've funded several nonprofits doing affordable housing development, and we just today closed on a project for a for-profit developer with another one coming in line. I wanted to make sure that the public understands how those funds are used.
In my professional life, I work for a national nonprofit that helps communities around the country strengthen their homeless systems of care. Housing First can't be housing only. It needs to be paired with supportive services. That's what makes the model successful. It is making the housing investment that Ann Arbor has already made more effective. And I think ultimately it's saving money because we're not sending people out for even more services.
This week's agenda included explanation that the sponsors of the resolution planned to postpone it. Council discussed the resolution for about 5 minutes.
Those monies coming back to the city are entirely unallocated. These monies are intended by the millage language and the millage authors to be directed back to jurisdictions that have police departments in unallocated form. That's coming back to us, and it's going to be in the neighborhood of about $3 million a year. It's worth noting that the use resolution is not binding, unlike some other contexts. In the absence of discussion, perhaps we could have an amendment to remove the bracketed language from the title prior to it coming back.
Council voted unanimously to postpone the resolution to the first meeting in October. The meeting adjourned before 9 p.m. For more details about this meeting, visit A2Council.com.
Welcome to this week's A2Council Moment of Zen.
Okay, I'm not sure if you were saying that we're not supposed to talk about this, Mr. Mayor, but if it is okay that we talk about that, I heard the same request for a plan.
A plan might be presented to council.
I don't see that there's a plan, really.
We want them to articulate that as a plan.
With no plan.
They'd like to see a plan.
A plan coming back to us.
Like I said, it's a change we plan on making.
And I heard a plan.